heading, and chapter shall mean respectively a tariff item, subheading, heading, and chapter as specified in the first schedule to the Customs Tariff Act. So, to interpret the entries of my second column in Notification 1 bar 2017, this explanation is giving me the power to refer to the first schedule to the Customs Tariff Act. So, why is this first schedule to Customs Tariff Act being made applicable to the GST law? This is because the first schedule to the Customs Tariff Act is fully aligned with the harmonized system of nomenclature, which is a coding system brought out by the World Customs Organization based at Brussels in Europe. So, this World Customs Organization is a body of experts which is having this classification committee, which constantly brings out and carries out in-depth analysis of how different products available across the globe need to be classified. This body has come up with this coding system, which we commonly refer to as the HSN. This is the Harmonized System of Nomenclature. So this first schedule to Customs Tariff Act is fully aligned to the Harmonized System of Nomenclature. That means whatever is the publication of the HSN by the World Customs Organization has been adopted by India, and these codes are also made applicable to the different imports and exports which are happening within our country itself. So this is a very welcome provision in the GST law, wherein the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act is being made applicable to the GST law also. You would have seen in the erstwhile VAT regime, each and every state had their own respective VAT commodity codes for the products. This led to a lot of confusion when there was a supply of interstate sales which were happening. But this, in the GST law, there is no separate code available for classification in the case of goods. In fact, it has been made and aligned to the first schedule of the Customs Tariff Act. So, first schedule to Customs Tariff Act aligned to the HSN, and first schedule to Customs Tariff Act being made applicable to GST makes the GST law in our country also fully aligned with the Harmonized System of Nomenclature. Now, this Harmonized System of Nomenclature is a very scientific tool which has been developed by the World Customs Organization, prescribing a unique code for each and every product available. This HSN has been adopted by more than 150 countries across the globe. So when I'm telling you 150 countries, it is talking about more than 95% of the trade which is undertaken across the globe. So this will help a person sitting in India to guide its client on what will be the classification, say based out of, if the client is based out of the US or Europe or say Thailand or any other such country which has adopted the Harmonized System of Nomenclature. This facilitates easy coding, this coding system facilitates huge data collection for the government so that the policies of import and export are constantly revised. So this provides the government with the data on the trade which is happening. Now this HSN, which is formulated by the World Customs Organization, is an 8-digit code available for all the different products. But if you see in the case of United States, the United States has gone ahead by adopting not only the 8 digits of the HSN, they have further subclassified their products and assigned a 10-digit code for each and every product available. So if you look at the United States, they will be following a 10-digit HSN code, whereas the World Customs is only having an 8-digit code. This is because the US is interested in more further minute collection of data to understand how each and every different type of a particular product, what will be the trade volumes and what are the countries which are dealing with those kind of products. That data is going to be available with the US because it is following a 10-digit HSN code. But this 8-digit is what is prescribed by the World Customs Organization, and India has adopted this 8-digit HSN code for its classification in the GST law. And this has been made applicable by way of a small explanation number 3, which is inserted in the Notification 1 bar 2007. Explanation number 4 further states that the rules for the interpretation of the first schedule of the Customs Tariff Act, including the sections and chapter notes and the general explanatory notes of the first schedule, shall, so far as may be, apply to the interpretation of this notification. So it is not always going to be easy for you to be able to find out one particular HSN code for your product. You are always going to be landing up with more than 2 HSN codes where your product would likely be classified under. So when this issue arises, to sort out this issue, explanation number 3 is also being made, is going to come to our rescue, where they're saying the rules for the interpretation, including the sections, chapter notes, and the general explanatory notes, will also apply to the interpretation in the GST law. So these are the additional tools which were available in the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act. And this not only the HSN codes, it is also the section notes, the chapter notes, the general explanatory notes, and the rules for the interpretation. All this together by way of this explanation number 4 is being made applicable in the GST law also. So when you're going to be confused between 2 different HSN codes for your product, this rules for the interpretation, by a reading of the section notes, chapter notes, and the general explanatory notes, you will be able to come down to a conclusion as to what would be the tax rate applicable in the case of that particular commodity. So we will be seeing in detail what are the rules for the interpretation and how the confusion with respect to more than 2 HSN codes can be sorted out by applying these rules for the interpretation. We can see that there is something called as section notes, chapter notes, and the general explanatory notes. Now, section notes is nothing but the notes which have been given as part of the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act itself. And the chapter notes are again which are forming part of the individual chapters in the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act. So to understand this, we will have to deal in detail as to what is the outline of the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act. We leave this aside for a moment, and now we'll determine how it will classification in the case of services that has to be done. We know that 1/2017 and 2/2017 are the 2 parent notifications in the case of supply of goods, the tax rates being prescribed in those notifications. What will happen in the case of services? You will not refer to 1/2017 or 2/2017 to find out the tax rate. You have to refer to 11/2017 and 12/2017 as you can see before your screen. This 11/2017 notification is talking about the rates applicable in the case of supply of services. 12/2017 is prescribing the various exemptions available in the case of supply of services. So your first step becomes very important to find out whether it is goods or services, because based on that conclusion, you will know whether you need to open up 1/2017 or 2/2017, or you need to directly refer to 11/2017 or 12/2017. So when I look at 11/2017 notification, this is a notification giving me the tax rates applicable in the case of supply of services. This is different than what we had seen in 1/2017. 1/2017 had divided it into 6 different schedules for each particular type of tax rate. But when you come to 11/2017, there is one common table available right before you, which is divided into 5 different columns. Serial number, here you are having chapter, section, or heading. In 1/2017, you had chapter, heading, subheading, and a tariff item. But here the wordings are chapter, section, or heading, followed by the description of service, a rate, and a condition column. That is, when you're adopting a particular rate, it is coming with a condition which has to mandatorily be followed. This 11/2017 prescribes the tax rate in the case of supply of services. As I scroll below this notification, I see that there is another explanation inserted over here. Explanation number 2 is trying to give out the meaning of my second column, which is referring to chapter, section, or heading. So here they say that reference to chapter, section, or heading, wherever they occur, unless the context otherwise requires, shall mean respectively as chapter, section, and heading in the annexed scheme of classification of services. We had seen that the notification 1/2017 was referring to the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act. As we know that the Customs Tariff Act deals only with the tax rates applicable for goods. But when you come to services, you will not refer to the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act. This particular explanation is making a reference to an annexure, which is the annexed scheme of classification of services. So to find out what will be the SAC code, that is the Service Accounting Code, which is applicable only in the case of services, to find out where is this, what is the SAC code to be adopted, you need to refer to this annexure which is attached to 11/2017, as you can see before your screens. So this annexure is what we have to refer. But in the case of goods, we don't have this annexure. You have to refer to the first schedule to Customs Tariff. So when I open to that annexure, this is what it talks about, which is the scheme of classification of services. The code prescribed over here, the chapter in fact, is chapter number 99. That is, when an invoice is bearing the number as 99, we know that the supplier of that particular commodity, that particular service, is being treated as a supplier of service. That is, 99 always indicates that the transaction has been classified as a supplier of service. Because you will see that from 1 to 98, it is being classified as HSN codes in the case of goods. So 1 to 98 has not been disturbed. An additional number, which is number 99, has been given for treating supplier of services. This is called as the SAC code and not the HSN code. SAC is the Service Accounting Code. In this, you can see section 5, which talks about construction services. So this chapter 99, which is dealing with all types of services, has been divided into 5 different sections. For example, section 5 talking on construction services. Under that, you have the heading 9954. So the first 2 digits is referring to the chapter number, which is 99. 5 is my section number, and 4 is an arbitrary digit which has been attached to this SAC code. Under this group of 994, you are having further subdivision in terms of different types of classifications, and a particular SAC code is being prescribed for each of these codes. So you can see 995411, 995412 deals with all different types of construction services. So this is what we're going to aim to find out, what will be the SAC code applicable for a particular service. But like I told you, when we're discussing classification of services, it is not that big a challenge as it is in the case of goods, given that there is multiple tax rates applicable. So we have seen what, how the tax rates, what is the authority given in the GST law for us to do this exercise of classification. It is not something which is explicitly written in the GST law in black and white. It is something which we need to interpret by reading the charging sections of the GST law, which said that a notification on the tax rates will be prescribed, will be notified by the government. So we have seen the 2 notifications, in fact 4 notifications, 1 and 2/2017 dealing with goods, 11 and 12 dealing in the case of services. So now we'll go back to what classification in the case of goods is to be done. We were referring to the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act. So let us have a broad overview of what the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act looks like. The first schedule, so the Customs Tariff Act has 2 schedules. We have schedule 1, which is dealing with import tariff, and schedule 2 dealing with export tariff. The explanation to 1/2017 has been referring very specifically to the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act. So we will be dealing with only import tariff, which is being made applicable to the GST law. So when I look at first schedule, that is the import tariff, it is divided into 21 sections, which is further divided into 98 chapters. And you have columns which are prescribing the different customs duty applicable, which is not relevant for us as of now. So this Customs Tariff Act, that is the first schedule, is divided into 21 sections, which are further divided into 98 chapters. If you can see, there's one particular chapter which is kept blank, that is based on whatever technological advances or new inventions, discoveries are going to be made. This particular chapter will bear those new future advancements which might come in for classification. So as such, we have 97 chapters, which with their particular HSN codes being classified under each of these chapters. So we need to understand what is the hierarchy of this first schedule to customs tariff. You have sections, which is a broad grouping of the different commodities available under the sun. So each and every good which is available in this world will have a particular HSN code for sure. So that is why you have 21 sections, that is broad grouping of different commodities are being done. Under these sections, further grouping, that is further classification is done in terms of having different chapters for different types of commodities covered under that particular section. This chapter is further divided into headings, subheadings, and tariff items. So this 8-digit code of HSN is nothing but the tariff item which we need to find out for a particular commodity. So 21 sections divided into 98 chapters. These chapters are further divided into headings and subheadings. There are more than 1200 headings available in the HSN coding system. And at a subheading level, it is almost around 5,300 subheadings you are available. That is the code in the case of codes. So section, like I told you, is a broad grouping of the different commodities. Under that, you have a sub-classification of the section in terms of chapters, sub-chapters, and headings, subheadings. So a 6-digit HSN code will mean at a subheading level. A 8-digit HSN code would be the tariff item. A 4-digit HSN code is the heading available for this. So you have sections, chapters, headings, subheadings, and tariff items. This is how the classification of this HSN has been done, or the first schedule to customs tariff act. Let's take some examples. Like I told you, there are 21 sections available in my first schedule to customs tariff act, which is also in the case of the World Customs Organization's publication of the HSN code. So like say, for example, section 1 is dealing with live animals and animal products. Section 2 dealing with vegetable products. So you can see the broad grouping which has been done. Section 4 dealing with prepared foodstuffs, beverages. Section 6 dealing with products of the chemical or allied industries. Section 11 dealing with textile and textile articles. 12 dealing with footwear, headgear, umbrella. And section 17 dealing with vehicles, aircraft, vessels, and associated transport equipment. So like this, you have 21 broad groups of commodities available. But as you can see, the titles of these sections itself, they are very broad. Now, live animals could mean any type of live animals can be covered under section 1. So this again will not help you in your classification. You need to look at the different chapters available in each of these sections. So now, for example, I take section 4. Section 4 dealing with prepared foodstuffs and beverages. When I look at section 4, I see that it is having different chapters. For example, chapter 16 dealing with preparations of meat and fish. Chapter 17 dealing with sugar and sugar confectionery items. Chapter 18 dealing with cocoa and cocoa preparations. So you look at the heading of section 4, which says prepared foodstuffs. Again, it's a very broad term. Under that, you're having different chapters available. So chapter 16 dealing with one type of prepared foodstuffs, which is preparations of meat and fish. Another type being sugar and sugar confectionery. A further type being of cocoa and cocoa preparations. So all this will fall below the section of prepared foodstuffs. So you have a dedicated chapter for each of these different types of prepared foodstuffs available. This is the chapter. So below the chapters, I said you have headings and subheadings. So when I, for example, I open up chapter 17, the different headings available over here are 1701, which talks about cane or beet sugar. So what was the title of chapter 17? It said sugar and sugar confectionery. So under this sugar and sugar confectionery, there is going to be a different heading which is going to deal with different types of sugar and sugar confectionery items. So you have 1701 dealing with cane or beet sugar and chemically pure sucrose. 1702 dealing with other sugars including chemically pure lactose, maltose, glucose. 1703 dealing with molasses resulting from the extraction or refining of sugar. So you can see right from the section heading of prepared foodstuff how the sub-classification and refinement has been done. This is like, you can imagine it like a funnel where the broad grouping is done and further it is being refined to one particular type of commodity for which a heading code is given, which is nothing but the HSN code available. So 1703 will be the heading for dealing with molasses resulting from the extraction and refining of sugar. So this is the HSN code. When I look below 1701 or 1702, 1703, I will see there will be further classifications available. That will mean under the heading, I'm having subheadings and the tariff items. So 4 digits is known as headings. Below the 4 digits, if I'm having a 6-digit code, it will be known as a subheading. And below that, if I'm having an 8-digit code, it will be called as a tariff item. So this I have taken, for example, chapter 17, which deals with sugar and sugar confectionery items. Here you can see the broad grouping which is being done, and you're also having this chapter notes and the subheading notes available over here. So we had referred to we have now seen what is the broad grouping and the broad overview, the outline of my first schedule to customs tariff act, which talks about sections, chapters, headings, subheadings, tariff items. Apart from this, I had told you about section notes and chapter notes and the general explanatory notes. So these are the additional tools which is being made applicable to the GST law for you to understand what are the different terminologies which is being used. What do you mean by chemically pure lactose, maltose? What do you mean by molasses? What do you mean by raw sugar? So all those terms are not going to be defined in my heading subheadings. It is going to be defined by way of a note, which is called as the chapter note. So you can see before you have an example of chapter 17 notes, which is saying what this chapter covers and what it does not cover. And when I'm using the term raw sugar in this particular chapter 17, what does it mean? It means sugar whose content of sucrose by weight corresponds to a polarimeter reading of less than 99.5 degrees. So there are certain technical terms which are being used over here. For you to understand what you mean by raw sugar, you do not have to refer to the dictionary. You need to refer to the section notes as well as the chapter notes. So right before you is the chapter notes available, which are prescribed within the chapter, and before the headings, that is 1701, you can see. Before this table can actually begin, you are going to have the chapter notes available over here. Similarly, we had seen section 4, which dealt with prepared foodstuffs. So before each and every type of this prepared foodstuffs begin, I'm going to have the section notes, which is going to be prescribed at the start of every section. This section notes is going to again define what are the types of products which is covered under that particular section, what is the scope of those section, what are the different terminologies, meanings which are common for that particular whole section will be defined in my section notes. So section notes before a section can start of the first schedule to customs tariff act, those are going to be called as the section notes. Before and the first part of every chapter is going to be the chapter notes, as you can see before. Then you have the general explanatory notes. So now what we have seen is section notes, chapter notes, headings, subheadings, sections. All this forms part of my first schedule to customs tariff act. Now what I'm going to talk about, which is the general explanatory notes, does not form part of my first schedule to customs tariff act. This is another publication by the World Customs Organization, wherein a different set of volumes of books have been written by them prescribing their viewpoint on a particular term which is used in the harmonized system of nomenclature coding system. So imagine you have a textbook and a guide. This is the similar way. The textbook in our case will be the HSN coding system, and the guide will be the explanatory notes, which is known as otherwise the general explanatory notes. This general explanatory notes will not form part of my harmonized system of nomenclature. It will not form part of my first schedule to customs tariff act. It is a totally separate publication. But there have been multiple case laws multiple decisions of the courts in the erstwhile indirect tax regime, which has told us that this explanatory notes is a safe, can be relied upon safely for understanding and interpreting the different entries available in my HSN coding system. So this explanatory notes is a guide provided by the interpretation of the World Customs Organization of the different terms used in this chapter 17 or this coding system itself. It is consists of around 5 volumes, and those who are interested and those who see that there is going to be they see huge potential in developing a practice in classification advices to their clients could also think about investing in this 5 voluminous publications of the World Customs Organization known as the General Explanatory Notes. Because when you do this exercise of classification, it is going to become very important for you to even refer to these general explanatory notes available. And this, in fact, even in the different cases decided by the advanced ruling authorities, they have also relied upon these explanatory notes, which is a publication of the WCO, for deciding upon the HSN code applicable. Now, as I told you, this World Customs Organization meets regularly, that is, the member countries meet regularly to find out how further the HSN coding system can be revised and updated based on whatever are the different issues faced by different member countries. Those issues are addressed by way of bringing out a separate publication, that is, an updated version of the harmonized system of nomenclature is available every 5 years. So right now we are dealing with the 2017 version of the harmonized system of nomenclature. This is due for revision in 2022. That is, in the year 2022, a new version of this harmonized system of nomenclature is going to be brought out. As this coding system is being revised and updated, the corresponding general explanatory notes is also constantly updated and revised to match the changes which are being made in the coding system of the HSN. So these explanatory notes are also being revised constantly in line with the HSN coding system. So we have seen section notes, chapter notes, general explanatory notes, as well as the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act. With all this available, do you think it is going to be a very easy exercise for you to do to find out what will be the HSN code applicable? I will take you through certain examples or certain case studies which I have developed for you to appreciate and try to apply these different rules of interpretation and also become more aware of what classification and how important it is in the GST law. So do you think this HSN is going to be very simple? Think about these different scenarios. What if these different scenarios are before you for undertaking this exercise of classification? Parts and accessories. How do you go about classifying parts and accessories? This is very important in the case of the automobile industry, where there are different parts being sold and assembled to make the complete vehicle. How will you classify this? Is there a particular HSN available for parts itself, or it has to be classified along with the parts of a motor vehicle itself? Sets and kits, different products being grouped together and sold as a particular set. How will you classify that? What about new products in the market? Say, for example, drones. We all know that drones have become the order of the day in the last 5 years. Where will you classify those kind of commodities which are developing over the day? Products consisting of mixed materials. We know one particular product is not purely made of one product. When there is a mixture of 2-3 materials, how do you classify that item? How do you classify that substance? Multi-purpose goods. So it is not necessary that only the ingredients are mixed. It could also mean that that particular commodity can perform multiple functions. What about those kind of commodities? How do you do the classification? Combinations of machines. So all these are the different scenarios which can come before you for undertaking the exercise of classification. I do not want you to jump to a conclusion as to what will be the way out of these, what will be the way out to the classification of this. I just want you to get thinking, and that will be the only objective of my topic over here right now. That by the end of this session, you should be more aware of how classification has to be done. I'm sure all of us would have got an opportunity to advise our clients on what will be the tax rate applicable. as soon as GST law had been implemented, and because of the changes in the tax rates which are being done constantly, our clients keep calling us regularly to find out whether there's a change in the tax rate or not. You will just get a call and ask you what is the tax rate applicable in the case of milk. It is not something where you can just Google up and find out what will be the tax rate, what the first result which is coming up in your Google search, that is going to be the HSN code applicable. That is not the right way. We as chartered accountants, we are considered to be par excellence. We are much more professional than what the other consultants are. So this kind of an advice, this way of consulting, giving consulting to our clients will not be the right approach to classification. So I'm sure that by the end of the session, you will never give away classification advices over a phone call, and that too for free. I would like to tell you that there are industry experts who undertake this classification, litigation especially, and who charge in lakhs for a particular opinion or to even represent the client before any of these authorities. So this is a very complex exercise, and it can get really complex depending upon the product available before you for classification. So do not jump to a conclusion. Never give away tax rate or the HSN code directly to your client without first having a look at the product itself. When you look at the different types of milk which is categorized in the customs tariff act, you will know that milk as such is not having one particular kind of a HSN code. Now, milk can also mean flavored milk, skimmed milk, toned milk, depending upon the animal from which the milk is got. This kind of classification, again, there will be a difference in the HSN code available. Now, if the tax rate as such is going to be the same, then classification issue will not be that much. But you still need to find out what will be the HSN code, because over a period of time, as tax rates are being rejigged, then there can be a scenario where your client would be caught with a different HSN code available. So we have to always understand and regularly do this exercise of classification. It is not something which has to be done first at the time of starting a business or at the time when the GST law was implemented itself. It has to constantly be reviewed. What is the HSN code available? So when these kind of scenarios come, that is when you need these rules for interpretation, these section notes, chapter notes, as well as the general explanatory notes for you to come to a conclusion on what will be the HSN code. Now, we had seen certain scenarios like parts, accessories, new products in the market. How will you classify those kind of products? Is it going to be based on the ingredient or based on the use of that particular commodity? So are you going to look at and decide on the classification based on what are the ingredients, that is the raw materials used to manufacture that product, or you're going to look and classify it based on where this product is ultimately going to be used? Say, for example, you are having aircraft tires. As we know, aircraft tires being made out of rubber. So will you classify it as based on the ingredient, that is an article of rubber, or based on its use, that is ultimately this aircraft tire is going to be used in an aircraft only? So will you still classify it as a parts of an aircraft? Do not give me an answer, but just think whether the ingredient or whether the use is going to be the determining factor for classification. Relevance of name. We all know that Ayurvedic products or this Siddha products, homeopathy products, have been under constant litigation in the erstwhile indirect tax regime. As to, we don't know whether these Ayurvedic products are to be considered as medicaments or whether they are supposed to be considered as cosmetic items. Now, in the case of medicaments, the GST rate is 12%. When it comes to cosmetics, it is at a rate of 18%. So leaving the tax rate aside, the tax rate in fact should not judge or should not help you to determine what is the classification, because if you're going to begin doing exercise based on what is the tax rate assigned to a particular HSN code, you're more likely going to land up with the wrong HSN code. So we need to take up this exercise of classification on a very independent basis. You have to forego whatever logic, whatever understanding you have of the product as of now, and what is the tax rates applicable. All those things have to be put aside, and on a very independent basis, you need to open the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act, read the section notes, chapter notes, and find out the code. do not let the GST tax rate find out what will be the tax rate applicable in your product. So for relevance of name, say for example, you're having a product which is having certain digestive properties. That is, a sugar confectionery item or a sweet is also having certain digestive properties. So whether the classification has to be done as an Ayurvedic product or whether it is to be classified as an item of the sugar or the sugar confectionery. So the relevance of that particular product's name becomes very important. How the taxpayer, your client, or the manufacturer is going to project this product into the market is going to determine how the classification has to be done. This information has to be mandatorily taken before you come to a conclusion. Scientific understanding. We all know we know that the term vegetable has not been defined in the GST law anywhere. In fact, in any of the taxing statutes, the term vegetable has not been defined. So what do you mean by the term vegetable? Is it referring to the stem of the plant? Is it referring to the root of the plant? Is it referring to the leaf or the flower or the fruit of the plant? We all know that for certain plants, each and every portion of that plant is an edible part. So what do you mean by a vegetable? That again becomes a subject matter of understanding. We need to find out what the term vegetable is. So scientific understanding again becomes very important. How those people who are dealing with those products day in and day out, how do they view those products? Domain understanding. The persons who are manufacturing those products, what is their understanding? Say, for example, surgical gloves. We all know that surgical gloves are gloves which are used in surgery. As the name itself suggests, I'm sure no one will differ with me in this aspect. Surgical gloves are gloves which are used in surgery. But when I approach people in that particular industry, the pharmaceutical industry, or the manufacturers and the traders and the end users of this product, I will know that surgical gloves are not the ones which are used in surgery. It is only sterile gloves which are used in surgery. So as the name itself would have suggested that it is a surgical glove used in surgery, much to its contrary, it is not used in a surgery. It is only sterile gloves which is used. So without having this domain understanding, without contacting people in that industry, if we are not going to understand how the product functions, then we will land up with a wrong classification. User understanding, again, how the end user who is actually going to use that product, how do they view the product? That again is also of importance. We know that there are certain medicines which are manufactured with a certain percentage, or sometimes even a high percentage of alcohol or psychotropic substances being used in the medicines itself. So does this mean that a medicine which is being used by the end user based on the prescription of the doctor, does it become a product of the alcoholic industry, or does it become a or a narcotic substance, or still does it continue to be a medicine itself? So these are the different aspects of a particular commodity which you need to undertake. First, you need to find out, gain knowledge of your product before this exercise, before you get into your first schedule to customs tariff act. There can never be a straight answer to a classification rate which is being asked by our clients. You always have to reply back with a letter, with a question asking as to what is the kind of product, where is it being used, what is the ingredients, how is it being manufactured, what do that particular trade refers to it as, how do the end users use this thing. So this whole chain, right from manufacturing, purchasing of raw materials to this selling and the sale of such product, has to be completely undertaken. The complete knowledge of such things have to be undertaken. So we know that there can be a confusion as to what will be the HSN code available. So you have the 6 rules of interpretation, section notes, chapter notes, and the HSN explanatory notes, which is given as tools for us to undertake this exercise of classification by way of an explanation number 4 to notification 1/2017. So I've given you an overview of what are section notes, chapter notes, and what are these HSN explanatory notes. So it is not going to be always easy that you find out one particular HSN code available. So this 6 rules of interpretation will come into the picture when you are having more than one HSN code available to a particular product. So how do you apply the 6 rules of interpretation, and how will that solve the confusion? that again we need to understand. In fact, these 6 rules of interpretation have been used and adopted by the courts right from the Supreme Court to the tribunal level also. This 6 rules of interpretation has been utilized to settle classification disputes. Even in the GST regime, the advanced ruling authorities which we have as of now are the ones who are also using these 6 rules of interpretation to give out clarifications in terms of what will be the HSN code. So let's look at what are the 6 rules of interpretation. The first rule is the general rule of interpretation, rule number 1. Now, these 6 rules are again prescribed and made applicable in the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act. These 6 rules of interpretation has again been formulated by the World Customs Organization, which will help all the member countries who have adopted this harmonized system of nomenclature to understand how to come to a conclusion. First 4 rules is the most important rule, which will come down and help you to boil down to one particular code. These 4 rules, that is rule 1 to rule 4, have to be applied sequentially to find out what will be the HSN code. When rule 1 fails, that is when only rule 2 and then further rule 3 and rule 4 has to be applied. You straight away cannot jump into rule 4 and come to a conclusion, or rule 2 or rule 3. It has to be in a sequential form. Rule 5 deals with only classification in the case of materials, packing materials. That is a rule 5, a dedicated rule for dealing with a situation of classifying packing materials. And rule 6 says that when you are doing classification, you have to understand that the 2 HSN codes which you are confused with has to be at the same level. Same level means we had recall the hierarchy. You had sections, chapters, headings, subheadings, tariff items. So when you are saying 2 HSN codes, say for example 732501, that is one code where your product, you think that it could be classified. Another one could be 732601. So here it is 6-digit, here 732501 is a 6-digit code, as well as 732601 is another 6-digit code. You have to compare only 2 codes which are at the same level. That is, it either has to be at a 6-digit level or at a 4-digit level or at an 8-digit level. You cannot compare a 4-digit HSN code with a 6-digit with another code which is of a 6 digits. That is what rule 6 is telling you to do. So now when you look at rule 1, it says the titles of sections, chapters and subchapters are provided for ease of reference only. For legal purposes, classification shall be determined according to the terms of the headings and any relative sections or chapter notes. So here, kindly recall the hierarchy which I was telling you on the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act. It is talking about sections, chapters, subchapters, headings, subheadings, and tariff item. If possible, I would request you to write it down so you'll appreciate it even in a better manner. So what rule 1 is telling you is the titles of sections in chapters and subchapters are provided for ease of reference only. That is, you will not go and do classification based on the titles of the sections, chapters, subchapters. You will not refer to this. Now recall the example I gave you, section 4, dealing with prepared foodstuffs. Under that you had chapter 17, which dealt with sugar and sugar confectionery. What is rule 1 telling you? The titles of sections and chapters, that is, prepared foodstuff and sugar confectionery, those titles are provided for ease of reference only. For legal purposes, classification shall be determined according to the terms of the headings and any relative section or chapter notes. Heading is referring to the 4-digit HSN code. So your classification has to be done based on the headings read with the relative section or chapter notes. Now this first schedule of to Customs Tariff Act, again, if you see more potential that you are going to have this opportunity of advising your clients on classification, then you first surely need to buy the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act book. This book, again, you can see is coming in 2 volumes and consists of nearly 1,000 pages each volume. So for you to scan through and navigate these different 1,000 pages to find out where your product could be classified, This titles of sections and chapter notes is going to help you. That is why it is saying it is provided for ease of reference only. So when I have a product which was an edible product, I know that section 4 dealing with prepared foodstuffs. So my product could be classified under that particular section. But I need to get into that particular section, look at the chapters, look at the headings, subheadings, explanatory notes, and then find out what will be the code available. But at least it has, to a great level, helped me to filter out the different sections and find out which section I need to further concentrate on. So that is why titles of sections and chapters, because their terms used in those are so wide, you will not be able to do the classification. Like the term prepared foodstuffs, it is so wide. Any type of edible commodity would become classified under section 4. So we should not go by the titles of sections and chapters. That is what rule 1 is telling us. We need to get into the terms of the headings and relative sections or chapters. So I had told you about the section notes and chapter notes which are available. This section chapter notes are available for each and every chapter and each and every section. The notes of one particular chapter cannot be utilized for interpreting entries of another particular chapter. It is very chapter specific. The section notes are again very section specific. Unless that particular chapter note itself is telling you that please refer to the meaning attached in that particular another chapter's chapter note, till then you cannot do this cross-referencing or cross-application of these chapter notes and section notes. So let us see how rule 1 can be applied. Now with this application of rule 1, which this is rule 1 in fact is considered as the most supreme rule of all the 6 rules. 90% of your classification will be done by following the principles of rule 1. But there can be scenarios where rule 1, which is not straight away available, a particular heading, a particular HSN code is not straight away available to you. That is when rule 1 will fail and you have to go sequentially. So you will adopt rule 2. So now let us see how rule 1 can be applied. So you have before you a rubber slipper, most commonly known as the Hawaii chappal. So how will you classify this product? So I opened my first schedule to customs tariff act. I have this product before me. Recall the discussion on ingredient or use. Now, will I go and classify it as articles of rubber? Or I know that this product is ultimately going to be used as footwear. So based on the end use, I need to classify it as footwear. How do I do the classification? So I opened the first schedule to customs tariff act. I looked at the different sections and the chapter headings, which would help me to navigate those voluminous pages. And I have come to the conclusion that these 2 chapters are relevant for my product. I think that chapter 40 and chapter 64 could be the basis of my product, could be classified in any of these, in one of these chapters. So when I have a confusion, now what did rule 1 say? The titles of sections and chapters are for ease of reference only. So when I look at the title of chapter 40, which talks about rubber and articles thereof, it is giving me an indication that this product could be classified over there also. When I look at chapter 64, which is dealing with footwear, gaiters, and the like, I again think that my product could be classified under chapter 64 also. That is exactly what rule 1 is telling us not to do. That is, do not go by the titles of the sections and chapters. You have to go to the respective headings and read those headings with the chapter notes and the section notes. So I opened chapter 40. This is talking about rubber and articles thereof. I have before me the notes, that is the chapter notes given. When I look at this notes, I see note number 2 talks about the chapter does not cover. So now the scope of chapter 40 is given in note number 2 of chapter 40. This note, if I refer to note 2b, which says footwear or parts thereof of chapter 64. That is, this chapter does not cover footwear or parts thereof of chapter 64. So I know that if this product is before me, if it is going to be classified under chapter 64, then it will not get classified under chapter 40 because of this note which is given in note 2b. So I will not get into the headings, subheadings and read the section notes, chapter notes, explanatory notes relating to chapter 40. I will keep chapter 40 aside. I will get into chapter 64. read the notes of chapter 64, read the headings under chapter 64. If I'm able to classify there, I will find out that particular HSN code in 64 and stop there. If I'm not able to come to a conclusion, that is when I come to chapter 40 and further delve deeply into chapter 40 and find out what will be the code applicable. So this rule is helping us to understand and how filtration has to be done. Because once you do undertake a study on the classification, sometimes it's a very time consuming exercise. So this is going to help us to a certain extent where they say, do not look at chapter 40. First you see 64. If it is under 64, then chapter 40 is totally ruled out because it does not cover footwear or parts thereof of my chapter 64. So this is how rule 1 is telling me to do the classification, and do not give any importance to the titles of the chapters and the sections. I need to refer to those particular notes and then refer to those particular headings, and then I find out my classification. Let's take another example. So this is a children tricycle. Again, I navigated the different chapter and found out 2 different chapters where my product could be classified. That is chapter 87, which talks about vehicles other than railway or tramway rolling stock. Chapter 95 dealing with toys, games and sports requisites, parts and accessories thereof. So there are 2 different chapters where a product of a children tricycle could be classified, because yes, it can be vehicles, and also it is ultimately used as a toy, so it can come under chapter 95 also. So again, I refer to the notes of chapter 87. What rule 1 says, do not go by the titles of the sections and the chapters. Looking at the chapters, it could be classified under both the chapters. So that is what they're saying, do not go by the titles of the chapters. Look at the notes. So when I look at chapter 87 notes, note number 4 specifically says that heading 8712 includes all children bicycles. Other children cycles fall in heading 9503. So this is what it is telling me. Heading 8712 includes all children bicycles. The product before me is not a bicycle. It is a children tricycle. So chapter 87 automatically gets excluded because of the note given. That is note number 4. They say other children cycles have to be classified under 9503. So I forget 87 because there is an explicit exclusion given. I look at chapter 95 and find out what will be the HSN code by reading the chapter 95 notes. So this is what rule 1 is telling. Do not go by the titles of sections and chapters. Look at the headings and the relative section notes, chapter notes. But some things can come up where it is not so straightforward for you to do the classification. Then in such a scenario, rule 1 will not help you out. You need to adopt the principles of rule 2A. So where rule 1 fails, where something is not straight away, no direct HSN entry, no direct description is available, then rule 1 will not help you to adopt the principles of rule 2A. So what does rule 2A tell you? Rule 2A says that any reference in a heading to an article shall be taken to include a reference to that article incomplete or unfinished, provided that as presented, the incomplete or unfinished article has the essential character of the complete or finished articles. It shall also be taken to include a reference to that article complete or finished, presented unassembled or disassembled. So you can see in rule 2A, this has expanded the scope of rule 1, wherein they are saying that when I am referring to a particular term in a heading, it does not mean that it has to be in its complete form only. It could also mean in that particular article in an incomplete or an unfinished form. The only condition is that it should have the essential character of the complete or finished article itself. Recall the example of the children tricycle which we did. We know that they have been referring to children's cycle. Now when I'm referring to that, it does not mean that the children's cycle has to be meaning in its completed form only. Even an incomplete or an unfinished form of that cycle could be classified along with the children's cycle also by the powers given in Rule 2A. But the only condition is that it should have the essential character of the completed article. 2A second part deals with unassembled or disassembled form. That is, articles in an unassembled or a disassembled form can also be classified along with the completed article, provided that it is having the essential character. So, what do you mean by essential character? How will you determine what is the essential character of that incomplete, unfinished, unassembled, or disassembled article? Now, this term as such has not been defined by the World Customs Organization or even in our GST law, also in the erstwhile indirect tax laws. But over a period of time, as litigation was settling the different disputes on classification, essential character meant that it is the most striking feature in a particular product. That is how the essential character can be determined. Essential character is the attribute which strongly marks or serves to distinguish what an article is. That which is indispensable to the structure, core, or condition of the article. That is how one of the courts had determined or defined what an essential character is. So now this essential character could be defined based upon the weight of the commodity, based on the ingredient, based on the value, based on what this commodity plays in the completed, the role which this commodity plays, the role which this component plays in that particular machinery. All that could help you to determine what will be the essential character. So this rule can be applied only when Rule 1 has been failed. So a reference to an article means a reference to that article, incomplete or unfinished, unassembled or disassembled. The only condition in these four scenarios is that it should have the essential character of the completed article. Now, unassembled or disassembled is nothing but your CKD or an SKD condition. It is a semi-knockdown or a complete knockdown condition of a particular commodity. For ease of transportation, these commodities or this particular product is totally dismantled and transported to the customer's premises for setting up an installation over there. So even this unassembled or a disassembled form of that article can be classified along with the article which is complete. Let us look at some examples where Rule 2A can be applied. In fact, this was a case in the case of Camlin Limited, wherein they were manufacturing this plastic crayons falling under the heading 960900. That is, Camlin Limited was manufacturing plastic crayons which was chargeable to nil rate of duty, and during this manufacture an intermediate product was developed which is known as the Crayplast shapeless plastic crayon. That is nothing but the crayons just before it is being set into the shape of a crayon. That is, before it is being molded into the shape of a crayon, this wax liquid, that is the wax along with the color essence which is added to this wax. This was in a liquid form, and the department sought to tax this intermediate product by saying that it is not a crayon as yet. It is to be classified not under 9609 as claimed by Camlin. It has to be classified under 3204, dealing as pigments and preparations based thereon, other than those in unformulated and unstandardized or unprepared form, not ready for use. So department said that this is not a crayon as yet. It has to be classified as a pigment under 3204. But Camlin Limited was treating this wax liquid plastic crayon as 9609 under pencils, crayons, pencil leads, pastels, drawing charcoals, writing or drawing chalks. So this was a confusion in the case of Camlin. When this case came up before the Supreme Court, by adopting the principles of Rule 2A, has said that this intermediate product, which is the Crayplast shapeless plastic crayon, has the essential character of the completed crayon only. So this liquid is not to be classified under 3204 as claimed by the department. It has to be classified as 9609, and Camden Limited's argument was accepted by the Supreme Court. In the instant case, the impugned goods only require to be given the shape of crayons before they can be made into finished crayons, and as such, they can be considered as incomplete or unfinished goods itself. Because this liquid crayon, just before it was being set into the plastic crayon, was still having the essential character of a completed article, and by principles of Rule 2A, it was still classified as pencils, crayons under 9609. So this was what the first part of Rule 2A, which we had seen, talking about incomplete or an unfinished article. The second part, dealing with unassembled or disassembled part, that will be the examples with relating to that is as here. So the second part of Rule 2A, dealing with unassembled or disassembled. So there is a wardrobe which is completely dismantled and it is being transported to the customer's premises for setting it up. So this is considered as a wardrobe only. That is, parts of the wardrobe, though in an unassembled form, will be still classified as a completed article, that is a completed wardrobe only, because it is having the essential character of a completed article. Now, essential character means when I look at the unassembled or a disassembled form of that article, I will not be able to classify that product into any other head. Say, for example, the second example of a car without wheels. We know that that car without wheels is, by looking at it, it is having the essential character of the car itself. Only the wheels as such are missing. So when I look at this car, I know that I will classify it as a car only. By looking at a car, I will not come to a conclusion that it can be classified as a tractor because it is not having the essential character of a tractor. So when I look at a product, I know that for sure it cannot be classified as anything else but a car, then it is having the essential features of the car itself. So a car without wheels will still be classified as a motor vehicle, as a car only, because it is having the essential character of the completed article. So even this incomplete, unassembled form of the article will be classified along with the completed article itself. That is what Rule 2A is telling you to do. But when this Rule 2A does not help you out, where Rule 2A fails, then classification has to be done by moving on to Rule 2B. I can give you certain more examples of Rule 2A, where, for example, say passenger coach without seats, that will still be classified as a passenger coach only because it is having the essential character of the completed article, which is a passenger coach. Bicycles without saddles or tires, bicycles without seats will still be classified as bicycles because it is having the essential character of the completed article only. So when this Rule 2A does not come to a rescue, you have to see whether Rule 2B can help you sort out your confusion. What does Rule 2B say? Rule 2B says that any reference in a heading to a material or substance shall be taken to include a reference to mixtures or combinations of that material or substance with other materials or substances. Any reference to goods of a given material or substance shall be taken to include a reference to goods consisting wholly or partly of such material or substance. The classification of goods consisting of more than one material or substance shall be according to the principles of Rule 3. I'm sure most of you would not have understood what Rule 2B is trying to say. It looks like more like a tongue twister. I will break it down for you. When I'm referring to a particular substance or a material in a heading, it does not mean that it has to be in its purest form only. That material or substance could be combined with other materials or substances also. So recall that case of having goods made of mixed materials. Then classification has to be, Rule 2B can help you to do the classification of such kind of goods. But when such kind of material or substance is so equal in nature. That is, you have two equally available goods or two equally available materials in a particular commodity, then rule 2b will not help you out to do your classification. You have to adopt the principles of rule 3. The last sentence says the classification of goods consisting of more than one material or substance shall be according to the principles of rule 3. Now, rule 2, for example, say gold. We know that gold is not always in its purest form only. There is certain amount, it could be say 95% gold, 99% gold. But there is a mixture of say copper or nickel which is attached, which is mixed along with that gold. So when I'm referring to the gold chapter in my first schedule to customs tariff, right, and I read the word gold, it does not mean gold has to be 100% gold only. Even this mixture of copper along with this gold can still be classified along with the gold itself. So this is what it is trying to tell you. The reference to a material in a heading, it should not mean it has to be in its purest form. Even a mixture of that material with other materials could be classified over there. But sometimes you can have two equally important materials being used. That is, say, for example, a shirt which is having cotton fabric as well as woven fabric in the same shirt. Then rule 2b will not help you to do the classification. So that is when it will fail and you have to see whether you can do the classification as per rule 3. So in my example of a shirt, rule 2b I will skip because it is not going to help me out. And because of the last sentence in rule 2b, which says that the classification of goods consisting of more than one material or substance shall be according to the principles of rule 3. So straight away I will see whether in the example of the shirt which I gave you, whether rule 3 will help me to do the classification. Another example could be, say, a kitchen utensil, which is having equal proportions of, say, wooden material as well as steel material. Then whether it will be classified as a steel item or whether it will be classified as a wooden item. So when you are having a combination of these mixtures of materials and it is so equal in proportion, then rule 2b will not help you. You have to see whether rule 3 can help. But let us look at certain examples where rule 2b can help us interpret. For example, the term coffee will include coffee mixed with chicory also. So when I refer to a heading dealing with cocoa preparations, then when I read the term coffee, it does not mean coffee has to be in its purest form. It could also mean coffee mixed with chicory as because of the powers given in rule 2b, where the scope of the terms are being widened. Natural rubber will cover a mixture of natural and synthetic rubber. Articles of gold will include articles which is made partly of gold also. So you saw rule 2a, which expanded the heading terms by saying that it does not have to be in its complete form. It can be unassembled, disassembled form also. Rule 2b further expanding the scope by saying that a material does not mean it has to be in its purest form. It could also include a combinations of other materials also. Now, in case rule 2b, for example, of the shirt which I gave you or the kitchen utensil I gave you, rule 2b will not help you out. You have to see whether rule 3 will help you out. Rule 3 says that, now rule 3 is divided into 3 different sub-rules, rule 3a, 3b, 3c. So rule 3 says that when by application of rule 2b or for any other reason, goods are prima facie classifiable under 2 or more headings, classification shall be effected as follows. That is, the heading which provides the most specific description shall be preferred to the heading providing a more general description. Rule 3a is saying that when you're confused between two headings and you do not know which heading will be applicable, then you choose the one which is more specific. This is a little contradicting to rule 1, wherein they say that if you're having a specific heading available, then you go ahead and classify it over there. So what rule 3a is saying that the heading which provides the more specific description, you classify based on that. Had I known which one is the heading which is giving me the more specific description, then I do not need to travel all the way to rule 3a and find out what will be my classification. I could have stopped by applying rule 1 itself. It is in the absence of knowing which is a more specific description, that is when I need to come all the way to rule 3a. To that extent, even Rule 3A will not help me find out what will be the classification. For example, in the shirt which I gave you, the shirt example which I gave you, you're having cotton fabric as well as woven fabric in a particular shirt. I will not know which one is providing me the most specific description. The HSN of cotton and HSN of HSN of cotton fabric and the HSN of the woven fabric, woolen fabric. I do not know which is more specific. So in such a scenario, even Rule 3A will not help me out. I have to see whether Rule 3B, Rule 3C can help me out. Let us look at certain scenarios where Rule 3A has helped to clear out this confusion. This is the most specific over general rule. That is, find out what is the HSN code, which one gives you a more specific description of the product. That is where the classification has to be done. Now, this example of Rule 3A, engine parts made of steel, whether you will classify under 8409 as parts suitable for use solely or principally with the engines of heading 8407 or 8408, or you will classify under 7325 as other cast articles of iron or steel. Where will the classification of this product be done? What Rule 3A told you? Find out what is more specific. Looking at the description of 8409, I see that it is very specific, wherein they are talking about parts suitably for use solely or principally with the engines of 8407 or 8408. Now, 8407 or 8408 is talking about different types of vehicles. 7325, when I read it, it says that other cast articles of iron or steel. Now, this heading of 7325 is a very general or a very residual entry is what I would say, wherein other cast articles of iron or steel, that is any types of article of iron or steel, could be classified under 7325. When I'm confused between these two HSN codes, I will see the one which is more specific. So here 8409, by applying Rule 3A, is helping me sort out the confusion and say that 8409 is more specific. So I will classify this case under 8409. Because 8409 is more specific than the heading of 7325. Let's take another example of Rule 3A, which told that more specific heading has to be chosen over the general heading. So, electric shaving machine, where will I classify this product? Under 8510 as shavers and hair clippers with self-contained electric motors, or under 8509, which says electromechanical domestic appliances with self-contained electric motors. Again, you find out which is more specific, which heading is very clearly describing the product in hand. When I look at 8510, it is talking dedicatedly only for shavers and hair clippers with self-contained electric motors. But when I look at 8509, it is talking about all types of domestic appliances with self-contained electric motors. So 8509 as such is a very wide term than 8510. Wherein 8510 is specifically dealing with electric shaving machines only. So, in this case, electric shaving machine has to be classified under 8510, being more specific over the general confusion of 8509. So, by principles of Rule 3A, it helped me to come to a conclusion where what will be the HSN code applicable for my particular product. So, 8510 being more specific, the product was classified over there. Plastic nameplate for motor vehicle is to be classified as accessory of motor vehicle and not other articles of plastic. So again, what is more specific? We know that the plastic nameplate is going to be used in the motor vehicle only. So it has to be classified as an accessory of motor vehicle and not as other articles of plastic. Some more examples of Rule 3A could be kitchen sink. Now, kitchen sink, will you classify it as a sanitary ware or as other household articles of iron or steel? Now, kitchen sanitary ware is having the HSN as 7324, and a household article of articles of iron or steel, as we saw, was having 7325. So again, which is more specific? Your sanitary ware heading is more specific than other cast articles of iron or steel. So 7324 will be the HSN code applicable in the case of kitchens. Now, when I had spoken about the shirt example, rule 3A also will not find out, you will not be able to come to a conclusion. So now you see the rule 3B will help you to do the classification. What does rule 3B say? Mixtures, composite goods consisting of different material is or made up of different components and goods put up in sets for retail sale, which cannot be classified by reference to rule A. Rule 3A shall be classified as if they consisted of the material or component which gives them their essential character insofar as this criterion is applicable. That is, you see composite goods which are put up in sets for retail sale.